J. Cole bought back the exact house he grew up in, the one his family lost to foreclosure when he was a kid. Then he did something almost no rich person ever does. He gave it away, turning it into rent-free housing for single mothers, family after family, for free. That one move tells you everything about how the smartest people in hip-hop actually think about money. J. Cole is by a wide margin the most beloved name on this entire list, and the house in Fayetteville is a big reason why. But the house is not the whole story. It is the headline of a much deeper philosophy. Cole came from almost nothing. A military family, a divorce, a move from base housing into a trailer park in Spring Lake, and then finally that two-story house that felt, in his words, like a mansion compared to where they came from. Then his mother's second marriage ended and the family lost it. That loss shaped him. So when he had the money, the first house he ever bought as an adult was not a flex. It was a rescue. He reclaimed the exact home he had lost. And here is what separates Cole from the pack. He does not perform poverty, and he does not perform wealth. He just opts out of the conversation entirely. He has gone years at a time barely posting on social media. He releases albums with almost no rollout, and they still go platinum with no features. A flex so quiet it became its own legend. His money goes into his Dreamville label, into his foundation, into Fayetteville. He built a machine that makes other artists rich instead of a trophy case that makes him look rich. Cole understood the core principle early, the one that ties this whole video together: ownership over consumption. A chain loses value the second you walk out of the store. A record label, a foundation, a piece of property that houses a family for free and builds goodwill that lasts decades. Those things compound. Cole is not cheap, he is strategic, and he is proof that you can be one of the biggest artists of your generation and still have your biggest headline be an act of generosity instead of an act of excess. From the most beloved, we move to the most calculated, Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick is one of the greatest rappers of his generation, a Pulitzer Prize winner, a man who can sell out stadiums on demand. And for years, while earning at the absolute top of the industry, he reportedly lived in a modest home in a middle-class neighborhood, rather than the sprawling celebrity compound everyone expected. Think about the discipline that takes. When you are Kendrick Lamar, every incentive in the culture pushes you toward the Hollywood Hills, toward the gated mansion, toward the visible proof that you made it. Living in a normal neighborhood is not the path of least resistance. It is a choice made against the current every single day, and the reason becomes obvious when you look at where his money actually went. Into PG Lang, the creative company he co-founded, a multidisciplinary house for music, film, and storytelling that he controls. Into ventures, into ownership. Kendrick treats his wealth the way a founder treats startup capital. You do not blow your runway on a Lamborghini when that same money reinvested could build something that pays you forever. But I want to be honest with you here because I promised I would. There is a version of Kendrick's low profile that is genuine financial discipline, and there is a version that is simply brand management. A reclusive, mysterious artist who avoids the spotlight is also, conveniently, an artist who builds enormous anticipation and demand by staying scarce. I am not saying his humility is fake, I think it is real, but I am saying that with an artist this deliberate about every word and every image, you cannot fully separate the man who genuinely does not care about flexing from the master strategist who knows that not flexing is its own kind of power. Keep that tension in mind because it is going to come up again. Next is an artist who made his discipline a public, documented decision. 21 Savage. In 2018, 21 Savage said something on camera that almost no rapper says out loud. He announced that he was done wearing diamond jewelry. His reasoning was pure economics. Jewelry, he argued, is a terrible investment. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that you can never sell for what you paid, that depreciates the second you own it, and that mostly serves to show other people you have money. For a genre where the chain is practically a uniform, this was close to heresy, but 21 did not just stop there. He poured himself into financial literacy. He launched a program teaching high school students about credit scores, banking, and money management, the exact knowledge that nobody handed to the artists who went broke. He partnered on a financial education initiative to get this information into the hands of kids who, like him, grew up without it. And this is where 21 Savage becomes genuinely important, not just admirable. The single biggest reason rappers go broke is not stupidity. It is that they come into millions of dollars with zero financial education in an industry that profits from their their ignorance. 21 looked at that machine and decided to fight it directly by arming the next generation with the knowledge he had to learn the hard way. He turned his own discipline into a curriculum. Our fourth name took the idea of stealth wealth and aimed it at an entire continent. Akon. You know Akon from The Hooks, a decade of inescapable radio records. What you may not know is the scale of what he has been building since. While most artists with his catalog would be coasting, Akon pivoted hard into infrastructure, into projects so large they make a mansion look like pocket change. He has talked openly about wearing inexpensive, even fake clothing and stepping back from the private jet lifestyle, specifically so he can pour capital into things that matter more to him. The headline project was Akon Lighting Africa, an initiative aimed at bringing solar power to millions of people across the continent who live without reliable electricity. Then there was his far more ambitious and controversial plan, Akon City, a futuristic development he announced in Senegal. Now, here is my second moment of honesty, and it is a big one. Akon City has not gone the way he promised. Reporting in the years since the announcement suggests the project has stalled badly, that the grand renderings have not become a real city, and that much of the land sits undeveloped. So when I put Akon on a list of disciplined, humble living moguls, I want to be clear about what I am praising. I am praising the redirection of priorities, the choice to chase infrastructure over indulgence. I am not telling you every project succeeded. Some of his vision has run far ahead of what he has actually delivered. The humility in his lifestyle is real. The empire he described is so far partly a promise, and an honest video has to hold both of those things at once. Our fifth artist built his discipline out of fear, Big Sean. Big Sean has spoken with real candor about something he calls his financial paranoia. It is a fear of going back to where he started, a fear of waking up one day and having it all gone. For a lot of people, that fear would be paralyzing. For Sean, it became a financial strategy. That paranoia is why he manages his money with what he describes as extreme caution. He is not the rapper buying a new fleet of cars every time an album drops. Instead, his money flows back into his hometown of Detroit. He has funded recording studios so that kids from his city have access to the tools he did not. He has invested in college housing. He put real capital into the place that made him, rather than into depreciating toys that make him look good on the internet. And I find Sean's case quietly powerful precisely because of the emotion underneath it. The other artists on this list often frame their discipline as pure strategy, cold and calculated. Sean is honest about the fear. He is honest that staying grounded is not effortless for him, that it is a daily act of managing an anxiety that a lot of people who grew up with nothing will recognize instantly. That honesty, to me, is more relatable than any perfectly polished mogul narrative. He is not pretending he floated above temptation. He is telling you he wrestles it and wins on purpose. Our sixth name kept his head down for 2 full decades, Ludacris. Ludacris is one of the most successful crossover artists hip-hop ever produced. A massive music career, then a second career in Hollywood as a central figure in one of the biggest film franchises on earth. By every measure, he had the income to live as loudly as he wanted. And yet, for more than 20 years, Ludacris has been repeatedly cited for the opposite, a grounded, level perspective on spending that never chased the headlines. He largely sidestepped the keeping up with the Joneses arms race that defines so much of the culture, the endless competition to have the bigger chain, the newer car, the more expensive watch. Instead, he leaned on diversification and long-term thinking, spreading his money across his music, his acting income, and outside business interests rather than pouring it into a single, visible monument to his own success. What makes Ludacris worth pausing on is how unremarkable his financial story is, and I mean that as the highest compliment. There is no bankruptcy, there is no IRS raid, there is no dramatic fall. He simply earned well across multiple industries for 2 decades and did not detonate it. In a genre where the cautionary tales are loud and the quiet successes go unmentioned, the absence of a disaster is its own kind of achievement. He is proof that sometimes the smartest financial move is just to be boring, consistently, for 20 years. Halfway through, I want to stop the countdown for a second, because I need you to see the pattern that is forming. 6 names in: J. Cole, Kendrick, 21 Savage, Akon, Big Sean, Ludacris. Completely different artists, completely different sounds and eras, and yet they are all doing a version of the exact same thing. They are taking the money that the culture expects them to spend on visible status, and they are quietly routing it somewhere else. Into companies, into communities, into education, into assets that grow while they sleep, or in the simplest cases, just not spending it at all. I told you at the start there is a difference between looking rich and being rich. Here is the deeper truth underneath that. The flex, the chain, the car, the watch, those are not signs of wealth. They are signs of spending. And spending is the opposite of wealth. Every dollar that goes onto your neck is a dollar that is no longer working for you. The artists on this list understood that the people who win the long game are almost never the loudest ones in the room. So watch what happens as we climb toward the top, because the higher we go, the more extreme and the more deliberate this philosophy gets. The final four are not just disciplined, they are architect. Master P. Before stealth wealth had a name, Master P was living it. In the 1990s, while the industry was teaching artists to sign away their rights for an advance and a chain, Master P built No Limit Records on one obsessive principle: own everything. He famously negotiated a distribution deal that kept the lion's share of his profits, an arrangement almost unheard of for an artist at the time. While the standard industry deal handed the label most of the money and left the artist with pennies on the dollar, Master P flipped it. He reportedly kept the large majority of every dollar his records earned because he owned the company that made them. He owned his masters, he owned his distribution. He treated the music less like art for its own sake and more like inventory in a business he fully controlled. He even put his own family and friends on the roster, keeping the entire operation in-house. And the results were enormous in the most literal financial sense. An empire that at its peak in the late 90s reportedly earned him well over $50 million in a single year and made him one of the wealthiest people in the entire industry, with earnings that rivaled or beat artists who sold far more records than he did. The genius was never the rapping. Plenty of people questioned whether Master P was even a great rapper. The genius was the structure. He understood that the artist who owns the factory always beats the artist who just works in it, no matter how talented the worker is. But here's what makes Master P belong on a list about humility, not just business. His message to younger artists has been remarkably consistent for 30 years. Do not buy the chains, do not buy the cars, not yet. He has openly preached that you should not spend on status symbols until your business is fully self-sustaining, until the money is coming in whether you work or not. He looked at a culture built on immediate gratification and told the next generation with total conviction to delay it, to build first and flex later if at all. He was the original voice telling rappers that the jewelry store is where wealth goes to die, and the man who took that blueprint and turned it into the biggest fortune in hip-hop history, Jay-Z. Now, you might be surprised to hear a billionaire described as humble. Jay-Z owns champagne brands and art and stakes in companies most of us will never touch. He is not living in a modest apartment. So let me be precise about what humble means in his case, because it is the most important financial lesson in this entire video. Here is the single most revealing fact about Jay-Z's fortune, and I want it to land. By most credible estimates, his wealth sits somewhere around $2.5 to $2.8 billion. And of that entire fortune, music, the thing that made him famous, the thing we all know him for, accounts for less than 4%. Sit with that number for a second. The rapping is under 4%. Everything else, the overwhelming majority, came from ownership. From spirits brands he built and sold for hundreds of millions. From Rock Nation. From an early bet on a streaming company. From real estate and venture capital. Jay-Z's version of humility is not about how he lives. It is about how he thinks. For 2 decades, his lyrics have explicitly warned against spending money foolishly, against the consumerist trap that swallows so many of his peers. While other artists were converting their advances into cars that lost half their value on the drive home, he was converting his into equity, into things that owned other things. He sold his clothing line, Rockaware, for over $200 million. He turned a $56 million investment in a streaming company into a payday several times that size when he sold it. He built a champagne brand and then sold half of it in a deal that valued the company in the billions. He treated himself less like a celebrity and more like a holding company that happened to start in a Brooklyn housing project. Now, here is where I have to be fair and apply the same skepticism I promised. Is Jay-Z humble in the way D1 is humble? Absolutely not. The man owns art worth tens of millions and throws parties most of us could not buy a ticket to. So calling him humble requires a specific definition. He is not humble in lifestyle. He is humble in financial behavior, in the discipline of never letting the spending outrun the ownership. That is a real and rare quality. But I am not going to sit here and pretend a billionaire with a private art collection is living modestly in the everyday sense. What he models is not a small life. It is a disciplined one. There is a difference, and you deserve to hear it stated plainly. The lesson here is brutal in its simplicity. The richest man in the history of this genre got there by understanding that the music was never the asset. The music was the marketing. The ownership was the wealth. And almost everyone who confused the two ended up broke. Our 9th name made his fortune in the quietest room of all, Nas. For decades, Nas has been celebrated as one of the greatest lyricists to ever touch a microphone. What got far less attention, until recently, is that while he was being crowned crowned a poet, he was quietly becoming one of the most successful venture capitalists in entertainment. Through his firm, Queensbridge Venture Partners, named after the housing project he came from, Nas started making early bets on technology companies, and not small ones. He was an early investor in Coinbase back in 2013 when the company was valued at around $140 million in a funding round. When Coinbase went public in 2021, that stake was reportedly worth tens of millions, by some estimates well over $40 million, from an investment that may have been as little as a few $100,000. He put money into Ring, the doorbell company, reportedly around $4.5 million, years before Amazon bought it for over $1 billion, earning him a reported $40 million return on that single deal. Dropbox, Lyft, PillPack, which Amazon also bought, more than 100 companies in total. Think about the contrast. While the culture was busy debating his bars, arguing about where he ranks among the greatest lyricists alive, Nas was sitting in rooms in Silicon Valley, building a portfolio that would quietly outpace almost anything he could have earned from music alone. He did not announce it. He did not turn it into a flex. He let the headlines come years later when Coinbase went public and Ring sold, and the world realized that the quiet rapper had been playing chess the entire time. There is a beautiful irony in it. The man the streets crowned a poet was, the whole time, one of the sharpest businessmen in the room, and he never once needed you to know it to make it true. And this is the purest expression of the whole stealth wealth philosophy. Nas understood that the loudest move is rarely the richest one. He moved in silence, let his investments compound in the background, and woke up wealthy in a way that has almost nothing to do with the thing he is famous for. He turned cultural capital into actual capital, and he did it without ever needing you to see it happen, which leaves the most radical name on this entire list. Not the richest, the most radical. D1. D1 is not a billionaire. He is not flipping Coinbase stock or building champagne empires, and that is exactly why he belongs at the climax of this video, because he took the philosophy to its absolute purest extreme. Here is his story. D1 was a middle school math teacher in Baton Rouge with student loan debt hanging over him. He left teaching to chase music, scraped by, and when RCA finally offered him a record deal, he did something that almost no artist in history has done with their first big advance. Most rappers buy a car, they buy jewelry, they take the vacation. D1 used a chunk of his advance to pay off his student loans, every dollar of his Sally Mae debt, and then he made a song about it called Sally Mae Back that went viral and turned getting out of debt into an anthem. And then there is the car. To this day, D1 drives a 1998 Honda Accord with nearly 300,000 miles on it. He made an entire song about it called No Car Note, celebrating the freedom of not paying $500 a month for a depreciating machine just to fit in. He has said that he refuses to buy a fancy car just to perform a wealth he has not actually built. Someone once messaged him saying they would not listen to his music because he did not drive a real rapper's car. His response was that he is just trying to be smart with his money. That is why D1 is the climax. Every other artist on this list practiced discipline at the scale of millions and billions. D1 practices it at the scale of a car note and a student loan, the exact scale that most people watching this actually live at. Jay-Z's lesson is hard to apply if you do not have a champagne brand to sell. Nas's lesson is hard to apply if you are not getting invited into Silicon Valley funding rounds. But D1's lesson? Anyone can use it tomorrow morning. Pay off the debt before you upgrade the lifestyle. Drive the car that runs instead of the car that impresses. Refuse to perform a wealth you have not built yet. He turned financial freedom into his entire brand and built a career touring schools, standing in front of rooms full of kids who look like him, teaching them that the most rebellious thing a rapper can do in 2026 is refuse to go into debt to look rich. He is a former math teacher who never really stopped teaching. He just swapped the classroom for a stage and the lesson plan for a microphone. He is not the wealthiest man here, he might be the freest. And freedom, when you really think about what bankrupted everyone in the other version of this story, might be the only number that actually matters. So what do all 10 of these people actually have in common? It is not that they are cheap, every one of them moves serious money. It is that they all understood early the single idea that the people who go broke never learn in time. The flex is a cost, not an asset. Looking rich and being rich are two different games, and you almost always have to choose one. J. Cole chose a house full of single mothers over a mansion. Kendrick chose a normal neighborhood and a company he controls. 21 Savage chose a curriculum over a chain. Big Sean chose his city over his garage. Ludacris chose boring consistency over the arms race. Master P chose ownership before everyone else even knew there was a choice. Jay-Z chose equity until the music became a rounding error in his own fortune. Nas chose silence and let it compound. And D1 chose a 1998 Honda over the entire performance. Here is my prediction, and I want you to watch for it over the next decade. The gap between these two groups is about to get wider than it has ever been. The artists chasing the flex are now doing it with money they do not even hold yet. Advances against streams, deals tied to crypto and tokens that can vanish overnight. The artists in this video are doing the opposite, locking down ownership and assets while everyone else rents their lifestyle. 10 years from now, we are going to be making two very different videos about this generation. One about the ones who looked rich, and one about the ones who actually were. The names will change, the lesson never does, and the quietest people in the room will, once again, turn out to have been the wealthiest the entire time.